Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating breakdown of human behavior, all based on a powerful piece of text titled The Anatomy of Self-Sabotage and the Path to Purpose. We all have goals, dreams, and aspirations, right? Yet, so often, the absolute biggest hurdle we face isn't external, it's us. Today, we're going to look closely at the anatomy of how we kind of unravel our own success. And, more importantly, we'll map out how this source material suggests we can actually pivot toward a life of genuine, meaningful purpose.
So, why do we stand in our own way? Before we really deconstruct the source material, I want you to reflect on your own habits for just a second. Think about a recent time when you knew exactly what you needed to do, but you chose to do the exact opposite. Was it fear? Maybe just seeking comfort? Look, it's a mirror we don't really like looking into, but acknowledging this paradox within ourselves, that's the very first step to breaking free from it.
So, the crucial point here is how the text actually defines self-sabotage. It's not some dramatic, explosive failure. It's actually something much quieter. The text defines it as being a drifter in life and accepting anything that comes along instead of having direction. It's entirely passive. It's basically letting life happen to you instead of actively steering the ship. Drifting aimlessly without any intentional direction, that is identified as the silent root of the entire problem.
Section 1, the trap of self-sabotage. This is where we unwittingly neglect our own foundation.
Now, this trap is rarely intentional. We don't just wake up and decide to sabotage our lives. Rather, we kind of slip into a series of small, seemingly harmless compromises over time. Self-sabotage often starts at a fundamental level, physically and socially. The text points out that we develop unhealthy habits. We ignore the well-being of our body and mind, and we just casually neglect our relationships. We're essentially sacrificing our health and our connections with others, which, by the way, are the very pillars that hold us up when things get tough, all because we're drifting instead of intentionally maintaining them.
Section 2, your internal blockers. Let's dive into the psychological barriers keeping us stuck.
Stepping out of the physical realm and into the psychological one, the source text gives us a super clear map of our mental hurdles. Behaviors like complaining, blaming, giving excuses, and playing the victim card, they all share a common thread. They're basically ways of surrendering our power to our circumstances. When we do this, we're essentially saying, I am not in control of my own life. Sure, it's a really common defense mechanism, but according to the text, engaging in these behaviors absolutely locks us into a vicious cycle of self-defeat.
Now, what's really interesting here is how cognitive laziness acts as a massive form of self-sabotage. Lacking self-awareness, not questioning our own thoughts, not assessing old beliefs that honestly just don't work for us anymore, and casually accepting information without being critical of ourselves or our surroundings. It's like a lack of critical thinking traps us. If we operate on outdated mental software and just passively consume information, well, we're never going to break the cycle.
And then there's the emotional paralysis, being fearful of everything, and consequently, never taking any risks. Pair that with constantly trying to please others, and wow, you have a recipe for complete stagnation. Think about it, the exhausting effort to keep everyone else happy, while avoiding any possibility of risk or failure, it completely prevents us from moving forward. We just stay safely, but miserably, stuck in place.
Section 3, chasing false metrics. These are the outside distractions.
If internal blockers are how we trap ourselves from the inside, false metrics are how the outside world distracts us. The source material draws a brilliant contrast here, equating wealth with only money versus equating it with health, relationships, passion, and purpose in life. The text makes it incredibly clear that viewing wealth through a purely financial lens is a huge form of self-sabotage. True wealth encompasses so much more than just a bank balance, right? It's really a holistic metric of a life well lived.
Similarly, we often equate our worth with the materials we own rather than the strength of our character. Prioritizing material goods over character development leaves us incredibly vulnerable because, let's face it, material things can fluctuate wildly. But character? That's the intrinsic foundation that actually allows us to navigate life's inevitable challenges effectively.
And then there is the happiness trap. Equating happiness with instant gratification versus investing time on things we truly love and feel passionate about. Giving into that quick hit, the instant dopamine rush, starves us of the much deeper, sustaining joy that comes from dedicating focused time to our true passions and long-term goals.
Because when we chase those false metrics, we naturally fall right into these specific behaviors, falling prey to distractions, spending precious time on matters we have absolutely no control over. The text specifically calls out things like politics, sports, and movies, and comparing our lives to other people's lives. Wasting your energy on things you can't control literally steals time and mental bandwidth away from your own personal growth.
The text even extends this concept of self-sabotage to how we raise the next generation. It specifically notes that relying way too much on schools instead of taking the time to educate and develop our kids ourselves is a self-sabotaging behavior. It's a prime example of passively outsourcing our core responsibilities. Again, just drifting along instead of taking an active, intentional role.
Let's move to Section 4 and see how this builds into our solution. Section 4, the path to purpose, reversing the dynamic.
Okay, so we've spent time identifying the drifter behaviors, the internal blockers, and those false metrics. Now let's pivot and look at the proactive path the source material actually lays out. Beating that drifter mindset requires a massive shift in how we perceive time. By anchoring ourselves to a 10, 15, or even a 20-year outlook, we completely escape the trap of instant gratification. When you look decades ahead, those daily distractions just lose their grip on you. Based directly on reversing the self-sabotaging behaviors we just discussed, here are the actionable steps to really find that purpose. Step 1. Assess and discard those old beliefs that just aren't working anymore. Step 2. Focus your energy on building a rock-solid character rather than just accumulating material goods. And Step 3. Deliberately invest your time in the things you genuinely love to do and feel passionate about.
But you know, the transformation isn't really complete if it just stops with you. The text strongly emphasizes that the ultimate cure for self-sabotage is turning our focus outward, being part of a community, contributing something meaningful, adding value. When you shift your mindset toward contributing to others, those internal blockers, like playing the victim or constantly trying to please everyone else, they just begin to fall away.
Which brings us to this incredibly powerful quote from the text. We gain significance only by being of service to others and adding value to others' lives. And honestly, this brilliantly illustrates the whole journey we've just taken. We start out self-sabotaging by being trapped in our own fears, chasing instant gratification, and drifting aimlessly. But true purpose? The text makes it absolutely clear. It's found in what we give, not what we take. So I'll leave you with this final provocative thought to consider today. If you stopped drifting right now and started looking 20 years down the line, whose life could you be adding value to today?